Today we're going to be checking out a video about someone's experience of how they see the U.S. after they lived in Europe for 2 years. I don't know where in Europe. They just said Europe as a whole.
Europe's not a country, it's a continent. So, I mean, we'll see how this is. It's always interesting seeing these videos because you get a new perspective. You know, living in other places around the world gives you a new perspective, and a lot of Americans don't do that.
I saw a comment recently on one of our, I think it was one of our UK videos. They were breaking down like the different ways of American thought, and they basically said that Americans that never leave the U.S. are just ignorant and arrogant, and then people that leave the U.S. never want to go back. Mm-hmm. So, let's check this out. Here we go.
Almost 2 years ago, I took one of the biggest risks of my entire life.
Oh, I wanna feel something. I just wanna breathe.
You got a lot of B-roll for this risk.
Dive into the deep.
I sold everything I owned, told my family and friends goodbye, and started a new chapter in Europe. Portugal, to be exact.
They still owe us money.
Yeah, they overbooked our flight or whatever, and we couldn't make it on, and then they paid him, but things got weird with me, and they just made it extremely hard to the point where we couldn't even do it, and we kept emailing them, and then they said the payment sent, but we never received it.
So who can we sue
Who
in
wants to
European
help us?
court?
Are you a lawyer? Can you help?
It was like 3 years ago, so
Probably doesn't matter.
Damn it. This is how I see the U.S. after living in Europe for almost 2 years.
All right.
And let's just say it changed me, but not in the way I thought it would. I'm going to be brutally honest and not going to hold back. Keep in mind these are only my opinions, and you can take it or leave it, simple as that. Ever since the first time I had visited Europe back in 2011, I knew that I wanted to move here at some point, gain some new perspective, and introduce a new culture into my life. And what better place to do it than Europe? Instead of 50 states, there's 50 different countries that speak completely different languages and all have diverse food and cultural backgrounds. So I'm gonna start with the biggest difference that I found between United States and Europe, and that is the work-life balance. Now, this is a big generalization because I know that there's countries in the European Union that work very hard and want everything to be perfect. Germany. But for the most part, it seems that one of the most important things to Europeans is their
restaurant is packed.
Yeah, is that like a good spot, or is it like a tourist trap or something?
quality of life. There is this generalization that a lot of Europeans don't work as hard as Americans, and I don't think that's completely true. Many cafes and restaurants in Europe have the same owner from the start to finish. They never retire, they do the same thing with very exceptional quality until the day they die. And this isn't something that happens too often in the United States. This is one of the reasons that I think in Europe, the food quality generally tends to be a bit better, even the fast food. The European fast food tends to still have fresh ingredients if they aren't the franchises from America like.
It's interesting that he mentions like the working harder in one country or the other versus where I feel like it's kind of almost the difference of working harder versus working smarter. Whereas the America, you're just told to work this amount of time to get this amount of money. In Europe, you're just working what fits or like what you need to do versus and like get the most benefit out of it. Because some of the countries are even doing the less work weeks, less days in the work week in there, which is crazy.
McDonald's. You can't compete with a restaurant whose owner has been cooking the same dishes for 50 plus years. And it's pretty obvious when I speak to friends and family back in the United States that they kind of have this rushed agenda where they're trying to get as much done as they can throughout the day. And this was me included when I lived in the United States and I was working 12-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week. But I was missing out on some of the most important things like stopping and really listening to my friends and family. And I think that this is one of the most important things to most Europeans. I think this idea
What the heck was that?
of important things to most Europeans.
It's creepy.
It's a banger B-roll
This
right there.
idea in the United States of having these big achievements and never being forgotten is something that's really important. However, in Europe, they have the right to be forgotten. There is actually a law in Europe that is the right to be forgotten. Now, this is a foreign concept that I don't think Americans think about a lot. In Europe, if you've had an imperfect past, the European Union allows you to move past that. And this also means that in Europe, people have the right to have their personal data erased once the personal data is no longer necessary to the organization collecting it. While in the US, forcing removal of articles on the internet is impermissible under the First Amendment. Now,
I wonder like how that works. Like that's a big thing in the US where if you're going to get a job that the employer might like scan through all your social medias and like do a deep dive on you. Does that not allowed to happen in Europe then? Or can you just delete all that stuff and have your right not to exist?
It's kind of, once again, like they said, it's freedom of speech. He claimed that the US version was freedom of speech. That's why those things can be online and you can't really take them down. But it's like the concept of Europe is freedom from and America is freedom to. Those companies have the freedom to put all of your information online. In Europe, you have the freedom from those people putting all your stuff online and ruining your privacy.
Living in Europe for almost 2 years, I have come to the conclusion that the United States is currently in a state of toxic extremism. It's not very common in Europe to hear people arguing about politics, blaming unrelated issues on opposing political parties or specific politicians. It's just something you don't really hear that often. Now, that doesn't mean that Europeans aren't political. However, you don't see it tearing apart families based on the president or prime minister that they voted for. When I go to family gatherings in Portugal, rarely does politics ever come up. And this is something
the first time he actually said what country he was living in.
Yeah, interesting.
Polarizing and disappointing in the United States. I can't go anywhere in the United States without somebody blaming something on Biden or Trump, like they're responsible for everything that's gone wrong in the past 10 years or something. Now,
you can't go anywhere on the internet without blame being thrown around to those two.
I mean, the internet's just, you can tell when a video has a lot of Americans because suddenly it's all stuff like that. It's always the politician. It's never the system.
Yeah, it's nothing about systems, corporations, other politicians than just the president.
It's very interesting. It's very they don't dig too deep. They don't think too far into it. There's a huge lack of critical thinking in the United States. And usually people say that that's what you learn when you get higher education, is how to think critically. And there's a big movement against people going to college in the United States now as well.
Because it's too woke and too communist. That's literally what people say.
Yeah. And that's why people with college degrees vote for those socialists all the time.
It's weird that people who are more educated vote a different way. Is that because they were indoctrinated or they're just smarter?
We're blaming Trump right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure, I have my political beliefs as well, but I usually keep them to myself and don't ruin everybody around them's energy and vibe. Now, in Europe, they have witnessed all of the extreme political swings, and they are living.
Was that B-roll of a person dressed as a dang Holocaust guard?
It seems like it.
He's got some crazy B-roll. Where did he get this stuff?
I don't know.
Now, in Europe, they have witnessed all of the extreme political swings, and they are living in a direct result of the aftermath, which is why they are a little bit more hesitant and seasoned when it comes to political matters. If you come from a place in the United States like Detroit or Flint, Michigan, like I do.
And their systems, I feel like, also allow them to have more of their ideas represented because of the parliamentary system.
Yeah.
More parties, more ideas that they can vote for. Where in the U.S., you have the two parties that are both, a lot of the times, both kind of agree on the same types of things, but you have to choose between them, and then everyone just kind of jumps on a team.
And it has to represent your entire country, two parties.
Yeah, so if you want there to be socialized medicine or universal healthcare in the United States, neither of the parties support that.
There's no one you can go to for your beliefs, so you just pick the lesser of the two evils.
And then if you believe that, and the Democrats in the United States, sometimes they're like, oh, maybe we could do something like that. We should give people more health care. Then the Republicans become like super extreme compared to your view. If they're like all the way to the point where they're like, wait, let's take away people's health care that they already have.
And there's the point that he made, the extremism.
Yeah.
Then safety is a night and day difference here in Europe, especially Portugal, which has been ranked one of the top 10 safest countries in the world.
What are you talking about? I see articles all the time about people getting stabbed.
After living in Europe for 2 years, I've been able to let my
That's a
guard
joke,
down
obviously.
and not be as paranoid. Especially when I'm walking around alleyways at night or going to see a movie or going to a festival, I don't have to worry about the place being shot up. It's very sad, but this is a true reality in the United States. And in the USA, wealthy people have moved to the
It's a crazy
suburbs in
neighborhood.
gated
Yeah, whoa.
communities because
Some
they
Florida
fear
place?
the inner city's
Or
rising
some
crime
place in
rates.
Europe, I don't know.
And I can't help but to think back in times when I lived in Los Angeles where I was robbed at gunpoint, or when I lived in Reno, Nevada and our family house was broken into multiple times. And sometimes it makes me apprehensive to come back to visit the United States. And if you've ever had a gun held to your chest, I'm sure you can sympathize with what I'm talking about. But after being in Europe for a couple years, there are few places that have violent crimes like the United States. Europe is certainly not a perfect place, and you do have crimes happening here. However, nowhere near the scale of the violent and gun crimes happening in the United States. A place where you can be attacked in the streets for your beliefs. And that concept to most Europeans is completely foreign. Now, I know that
I mean, it's crazy that the U.S. claims to be this whole great, big, amazing country, but has some of the worst cities in the world for crime, and
It's like South America level, some of them.
yeah,
It's crazy.
and that's like cartel stuff going on
And
in
it's-
those cities.
And then it's like St. Louis, Missouri, like right in the middle of nowhere in the U.S. is just super dangerous. Why? Probably because of the living conditions and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
Yeah, the system again.
yeah.
this exist here in Europe. However, I have never heard an ethnic or racial slur ever yelled on the streets like I have in the United States.
Interesting.
And that should say a lot. All right, now let's talk about the food. Unless you have the
yeah.
financial means to do so, you are likely paying 4 times for gourmet foods in the United States, where in
Yeah,
Europe,
eating
these
healthy is
foods are
expensive
just
in the US.
normal. In America, fresh, healthy food is usually sold at a premium where only the richer people can afford it. In my opinion, this is a crime against humanity. Here in Europe, they subsidize the agriculture so that it can still be sold at an affordable price. And more than half of the GMOs and chemicals available in United States foods are illegal in Europe.
Red 40?
Typically
More
in
than
Europe,
half.
teenagers speak multiple different languages. They're well versed in fine arts and music. And they understand world geography. Generally just much more cultured than what I see typically in the United States. I mean, when I first came to Europe when I was 21-year-olds, I had 17-year-olds playing me Mozart and Bach and painting incredible paintings and speaking 4 different languages to me, and I realized that, wow, I am not cultured at all. And I think a
cannot be
big part of this
typical,
is
can it?
attributed
To have
to
some
the
random
education.
people playing a
All
Mozart.
over Europe, schooling
Seems a
is
bit odd.
free. And some of the best universities are even free. Students here can focus on their passions, and if they don't like what they're gotten into, they can switch it without being in this massive mountain of debt like in the United
Wow.
States.
It is in the U.S. since the school is so expensive. It's often looked down upon to go for sort of an arts degree of any
Waste.
sort.
It's a waste of money.
Because you're gonna spend all that money and then your job isn't gonna pay as well after. So it is true that the arts are gonna be less common in the U.S. because of that.
But if you don't have to worry about being homeless or having to live in a neighborhood where you could have your house broken into at any point or shot on the street, then maybe you can pursue things like the arts and music, because you have things to help you if you don't make it in a STEM, whatever one they always say, the STEM or business
Yeah.
or medical, whatever.
Lawyer.
Yeah, you got to be one of those or you're a failure.
Students in Europe can focus on their passions, And if they made the wrong decision and don't like the career path they're taking, they're not in mountains of debt like they are in the United States. They don't have this strong pressure to continue to pursue something they don't want to do. And I think this is really important. Some countries in Europe even allow you to go into a specific trade of choice to be able to follow your passion and not have to learn all of this useless knowledge that has nothing to do with your career path.
Generals?
I know many people, including myself, that are afraid to go to the doctor in the United States because of how much it's gonna cost. And it's a complete opposite contrast here in Europe, where many of my friends go to the doctor regularly just to get a checkup because they can. And it seems to be encouraged
Seems
by
nice.
the doctors. In Europe, things like blood tests and exams are a fraction of the cost that they are in the United States. For instance, I went to the hospital and needed to have an x-ray done on my finger. And I went, no, how much is that gonna cost? And they said, €1. And I went, can you
Wow.
put my whole body into the x-ray machine then? Just kidding, I don't need any unnecessary radiation exposure. But I don't think that people should be in fear of going to the doctor, and this is the reality for a lot of people in the United States. Currently, I pay a premium healthcare insurance in Portugal for about €85 a month, and that includes just
85
about
for
everything.
premium?
Whereas a not so good insurance in the United States that I was paying $500 for a month was never accepted anywhere and was a complete hassle to have.
Crazy.
So the polarization is pretty crazy in terms of the healthcare here. Now, I will say that the public hospitals tend to get overrun here in Portugal sometimes. But because I have private healthcare insurance, I can use any of the private state-of-the-art hospitals located anywhere in Portugal. And I've been there a couple times and they're super nice and I've been really impressed by the facilities. Now,
85
alcoholism
euros.
certainly
Wow.
exists in Europe, that's for sure. But the drinking culture in the United States is completely different than most of Europe, maybe more similar to Ireland or United Kingdom. A lot of European countries have a long history with wine and beer, and they've developed an art form on when and where and how much to drink. In comparison to the American binge culture, shots, this doesn't really exist in Europe for the most part. In fact, it's very rare to see people taking shots, and if they are, they're these little baby shots that are half of what they are in the United States. I feel
Even
like
in the US, if they don't take shots, they still just like will drink beer until they're drunk.
Yeah.
Even just for no reason.
Yeah, or just like the hard liquor, but not in shot form.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's odd to me that so many people in the US just drink till they're drunk. It's very interesting.
United States, it's encouraged to get wasted and get super drunk, and people brag about these experiences. But in Europe, you don't want to be that guy. Don't be that guy stumbling through the streets. They will think you are a complete idiot. Do yourself a favor and don't be that guy. But how I see the United States now is not all negative, and there are some things that I took for granted while growing up there.
Oh.
One of those things
the
is
other
the
side.
American dream. Now, a lot of people said that is dead, but I believe the spirit is still very alive and well. The concept of entrepreneurship is not as popular here in Europe as it is in the United States. The United States is a place where people have a dream and they can move that future forward. And I have to credit that optimism for the entrepreneur spirit that I have today. And I never realized how truly American this concept was. And I would not be where I'm at today without this hustler go-getter mentality. And I have to give massive credit to the United States for that. I think a lot of times in Europe, it is this foreign concept to have this grandiose dream where you can live in financial freedom and retire early. But I believe Americans have this spirit of working very, very, very hard to be able to retire and enjoy, a certain amount of your life. However, one of the biggest problems is that people don't end up retiring until 65 in the United States, and most of your life's over. So younger Americans now want to retire at 40 and 35 if they
That'd be
can.
pretty nice.
And more power to them if they can figure out how to do so. But after
Most people do
painting
not.
these generalizations with such a wide brush, it's important to mention that there are countercultures and micro-communities all over the United States that also criticize many of the things that I mentioned in this video. There's an America that I love and miss so much. But of course, there are truths to the stereotypes or else they wouldn't exist. But at the end of the day, honestly, I'm just trying to have an open, fun conversation. And that's one of the beautiful things about living in the free world. Let me know in the comments below what you
All right.
think.
The American Dream part he added in the end is a little interesting. I guess if your goal is entrepreneurism, I bet you America might be one of the better places for that.
If you have the income and the opportunity to pursue those dreams. A lot of people in the U.S. are living paycheck to paycheck and don't have a chance to pursue entrepreneurial things.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. Thank you guys all for watching. We got 3 seconds.
See ya.